On January 1, 2022, a somber mood settled over the Supreme Vikings confraternity within the city of Agbor in Delta State. The news of their executioner's untimely demise sent shockwaves through the organization. Samson, known to his peers as a formidable and unyielding leader, had been thrown overboard during an internal conflict. As the Vikings leader, exclusively recognized as the executioner at Agbo College of Education, Samson had earned a reputation for his unwavering dedication to the confraternity's principles. During his tenure, Samson had garnered widespread respect from his fellow Vikings at the institution. They admired his leadership skills, which had been honed through his sailing days as the executioner of the Supreme Vikings. Those who had the privilege of crossing paths with him during that period recalled his unrelenting stance on discipline. Samson had zero tolerance for anyone who dared to violate the confraternity's principles, and his unwavering commitment to upholding the organization's values had earned him the admiration of many. The majority of the Vikings at Agbo College of Education saw Samson as an exceptional leader, one who possessed the skills and powers necessary to propel the confraternity forward. His ability to inspire loyalty and devotion in his followers was undeniable, and many believed that he was the driving force behind the organization's success. However, not everyone shared this positive sentiment, particularly those Vikings who hailed from neighboring decks. These individuals had a vastly different perspective on Samson's leadership style. They viewed him as strict and unyielding, and his refusal to compromise on the confraternity's principles was seen as a liability. Their lack of support for Samson's leadership ultimately proved to be a fatal mistake, setting off a chain reaction that would change the course of the confraternity's history forever. As the news of Samson's demise spread, the Supreme Vikings confraternity was plunged into a state of mourning. The organization's members struggled to come to terms with the loss of their leader, and the future of the confraternity hung in the balance. The question on everyone's mind was, what would happen next? Would the organization be able to recover from this devastating blow, or would it succumb to the internal conflict that had claimed Samson's life? According to sources close to the confraternity, Samson's tenure as the executioner of the Vikings deck within the school chapter was marked by a noticeable disconnect with the neighboring street deck. The street deck, comprised of Vikings who weren't students of any institution, felt that Samson had little to no regard for them. This perceived disregard was said to stem from Samson's belief that to earn his respect as a Viking, one needed to be enrolled in a higher institution. As a result, Samson rarely interacted with the street Vikings or acknowledged their contributions to the confraternity. This lack of recognition was deeply felt by the street Vikings, who saw themselves as an integral part of the organization. They believed that their efforts and dedication to the Vikings' principles should be valued and respected, regardless of their student status. The street Vikings claimed that Samson's sentiment was not only dismissive but also divisive. They felt that his stance created an unnecessary hierarchy within the confraternity, with student Vikings being viewed as superior to their non-student counterparts. This perceived snub led to several altercations between Samson and the street Vikings, with tensions running high between the two groups. The street Vikings, who boasted of carrying out successful operations against rival groups and possessing an arsenal of weapons, felt that Samson's disdain for them was unwarranted. They argued that their contributions to the confraternity were just as valuable, if not more so, than those of the student Vikings. The street Vikings saw themselves as the backbone of the organization, providing the muscle and grit that kept the confraternity afloat. As the rift between Samson and the street Vikings grew wider, the confraternity's internal dynamics became increasingly strained. The student Vikings, who had long been loyal to Samson, began to feel the weight of the street Vikings' resentment. The tension between the two groups was palpable, with both sides engaging in a war of words and posturing. The street Vikings, fueled by their sense of injustice and perceived disrespect, started to question Samson's leadership and the direction of the confraternity. They felt that Samson's narrow focus on student Vikings was detrimental to the organization's overall well-being and that a more inclusive approach was needed. The stage was set for a confrontation, and it seemed that it was only a matter of time before the simmering tensions boiled over into something more violent. In the midst of this growing unease, Samson remained resolute in his convictions. He believed that the confraternity's strength lay in its student membership, and that the organization's future depended on nurturing and developing the next generation of leaders. However, his refusal to budge on the issue of the street Vikings only served to further antagonize an already volatile situation. As the days turned into weeks, the confraternity's internal conflicts continued to escalate. The street Vikings, feeling increasingly marginalized and disrespected, began to plot their next move. Samson, confident in his own leadership and the loyalty of his student Vikings, seemed oblivious to the danger that was brewing. The question on everyone's mind was, how would this conflict ultimately play out, and what would be the cost to the confraternity? An alternative narrative emerged, suggesting that the root of Samson's conflict with the street Vikings lay in a business deal that had soured. Although the specifics of the deal remained shrouded in mystery, it was alleged that the disagreement that followed had left an indelible mark on Samson's perception of the street Vikings. He began to harbor resentment towards them, particularly those who operated in close proximity to his fellow student Vikings at Agbo College of Education. As the feud escalated, the internal tensions within the confraternity reached a boiling point. What had initially started as a disagreement between Samson and the street Vikings soon morphed into a full-blown conflict between two factions, the Vikings within the college walls and those who operated in the neighboring streets. The situation took a dark turn when the conflict turned physical. Samson, fueled by his anger and sense of betrayal, assembled a hit squad comprising his most loyal Vikings. Their target was the second-in-command of the neighboring street Vikings, a man notorious for his stubbornness, unforgiving nature, and aggressive demeanor. The attack was brutal, and the street Viking leader was severely injured. He was hospitalized for weeks, and the incident sent shockwaves through the confraternity. Surprisingly, there was no immediate retaliation from the street Vikings. The issue seemed to have been temporarily resolved, but beneath the surface, tensions continued to simmer. Unbeknownst to the confraternity members, a more deadly conflict was brewing on the horizon. The calm that followed the attack was merely the eye of the storm, and the winds of chaos were gathering strength, ready to unleash their fury upon the unsuspecting members. In the aftermath of the attack, questions lingered about the future of the confraternity. Would the street Vikings seek revenge, or would they choose to forgive and forget? Only time would tell if the Vikings could heal their internal wounds or if the organization would be torn apart by the very conflict that had been simmering beneath the surface. After being hospitalized and later discharged, the Viking who was second in command harbored an unquenchable thirst for revenge against Samson. The memory of the brutal attack still lingered, and he vowed never to let Samson go unpunished. Driven by this desire for retribution, the injured street Viking set his sights on ascending to a position of power within his street deck. He sought to become the executioner, the leader of his group, and his ambition was fueled by a singular goal, to exact vengeance on Samson. With calculated precision, he maneuvered himself into the coveted role, facing little opposition as he swiftly climbed the ranks. His ascension to the position of executioner was not driven by a desire to lead or serve his fellow Vikings, but rather by a personal vendetta. He wanted to be in a position of authority so he could assemble a team of loyal and ruthless Vikings, capable of taking down Samson, the executioner at Agbo College of Education. As the newly minted executioner of his street deck, he wasted no time in putting his plan into action. He handpicked a team of his most trusted and skilled Vikings, forming a hit squad with a singular mission, to track down and eliminate Samson. The squad scoured the streets, gathering intelligence and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That moment arrived when they discovered Samson's location, a secluded spot, far from prying eyes. The hit squad descended upon Samson, attacking him with ferocity and precision. The outcome was all but certain, and Samson, the formidable Viking executioner, met his demise at the hands of his sworn enemies. The news of Samson's death spread like wildfire, sending shockwaves through the Viking community. His loyalists and fellow Vikings at Agbo College of Education were consumed by rage and grief. They couldn't fathom how their leader, the man who had inspired loyalty and devotion, had been brought down by the very people they had long considered inferior. In their anger and sorrow, Samson's loyalists launched a retaliatory attack, seeking to avenge their leader's death. However, their targets proved elusive, and the leader of the street Vikings, the mastermind behind Samson's demise, remained at large. Frustrated and still fueled by anger, the Vikings found two street Viking members who were loyal to their leader and brutally took them down. The cycle of violence and retaliation had claimed more lives, leaving both factions reeling from the consequences of their actions. The story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of courtism and the devastating consequences that can unfold when individuals prioritize personal vendettas over reason and humanity.